There we go. Now we're live. The thing says we're live. I think I'm all plugged in. I should probably check. I should have checked already to make sure we have the right microphone setup when we do. So hopefully you can hear me as we get started on tonight's live Panther-Lair Show. Extending a special welcome to our friends on Blue Sky because I realized that I didn't post anything on Blue Sky today, and it seems like a lot of Pitt fans are on Blue Sky. So while we tweeted like crazy all day, we didn't Blue Sky as much as we could have. So just put out a special invite to all our friends on Blue Sky. Hopefully you guys will tune in here. I'm not sure what the verb is for Blue. Actually, I've heard people use a verb for what it's called when you put a post on Blue Sky, and I'm not going to say it. So I'm still going to call them tweets, and I'm going to call them Blue Sky posts. But either way, I hope you're all here to hang out for an hour of Pitt sports talk, starting a half hour earlier than we typically do, because Pitt basketball has a game tonight at Mississippi State as part of the alphabetically incorrect SEC ACC challenge. The Panthers are in Starkville. No one else is there. We're getting reports that there's not much of a crowd expected for this game tonight. Very little media coverage. I don't think anyone from Pittsburgh traveled to the game. Our colleagues at the Post-Gazette, who were really the only possibilities, Chris Carter and Stephen Thompson, are not in Starkville. I don't know if anyone else, I don't know if George or anybody went. So it's going to be one of those games, but you know what? It's going to be late. It's going to get weird, and we'll see how it goes. But we'll all be watching. But I didn't want to have the Panther-Lair Show go head-to-head with the Pitt basketball game, even for the last 15 minutes of our show. So we started an hour or a half hour early. We'll go 8 to 9 tonight, and then we'll get done in time for you to get your jammies on and get ready to watch Pitt, Mississippi State at 9:15 this evening. We'll have some basketball talk for sure, but of course today is signing day. Jim Hammett will join us in a couple minutes to talk about the recruiting class so far that Pitt signed today. And we can talk about what else? Transfer portal stuff. That's obviously a big part of it, and all ACC and lots of things that are going on this week. But primarily recruiting, I think that's going to be a big subject as we dive into the conversation. We've talked about it a lot already today on the Morning Pit, and then we had the live stream at 10 a.m. this morning. Lots of videos that we posted on YouTube with Pat Narduzzi and all the assistant coaches talking about the recruits. And then here we are again for the live stream. So if you weren't able to tune in earlier, or if you have questions that didn't get answered earlier, or questions that came up from what you heard us say earlier, put it all in the chat screen right off to the side and ask away. Post your comments and questions, and we'll get to as many as we can here on tonight's Panther-Lair Show. Real quick, tell you about Home Field Apparel. The Home Field Black Friday sale is over, but you can still get 15% off with our promo code PIT24. Use that at homefieldapparel.com to get some of the best Pitt gear that you're going to find. I mean, I've got my UIC Flames sweatshirt on, super comfortable, super soft on these chilly winter evenings, and gets the job done. But their Pitt stuff is second to none. It's outstanding, and you can get it for 15% off with promo code PIT24. Go to homefieldapparel.com. Use promo code PIT24. All right, let's bring in Jim, talk a little recruiting class, a little transfer portal, get your comments and questions in as well. Jim, is my volume on? There it is. How are you this evening, sir?
I'm good. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm all right. Did you ever even entertain the thought of going to Starkville tonight?
No.
Yeah.
I think it's like one of the hardest places to get to in like the Power 5.
Oh yeah.
Like
I've never even looked. Where would do you fly into Starkville? Like, how do you even get there? What's close?
I don't know. Like, I was talking to Stephen Thompson earlier, and he said something like he was gonna possibly fly to Atlanta, then rent a car. And the Post-Gazette was like, you know what? You can do this one from home, man.
Wow. I'm Starkville. Let's see if I'm just looking it up real quick. If I had flown from yesterday to tomorrow, like a round trip, I'm looking on Expedia. This might take a minute for Expedia to look it up. There might be an airport somewhere near there. Let's see what they actually turn up for me. Yeah, Columbus. There's an airport called Columbus. It's a 4-hour flight with a stop in Atlanta, and it costs $700. So,
yeah, wasn't really in the budget for this one.
No. I wonder what the drive would have been. Did he say how long it would have taken to drive from Atlanta?
I think like 4 hours. So it looks like you're not that far from Birmingham. I don't know if you could fly into there.
You know what? I think a lot of people Yeah, I mean, I guess you could fly into Birmingham, um, or even Tuscaloosa. I don't know if Tuscaloosa's got a decent airport. It's funny how I mean, like you look on a map, Birmingham and Atlanta don't really look close to each other, but it's the kind of thing where like in Birmingham, there's signs everywhere, like this road to Atlanta, this road to it. Like driving from Atlanta to Birmingham is like a very common thing. And whatever that main highway is there, Route 20. And so, I guess, flying to Atlanta and driving 4.5 hours to go to a basketball game in Starkville, Mississippi. I don't know, man. I don't think I would do that. You know, it's a weird street sign, and I'll move on from this in a second, but I live in the South Hills, and there's some spots on Route 51 that are like Uniontown. And I'm like, Uniontown's like 20 miles away. Like, Uniontown is a solid 45-minute drive from here. Like, Uniontown must have been just this metropolis, in the 70s that they felt like, oh, if you're driving out of the Liberty Tunnels, you want to know which way to go to get to Uniontown. Like it was such a main destination. You know what I mean? That they would like feature. Like if you come out of the Liberty Tunnels heading south, it's like, oh, here's the way you want to go to get to Uniontown. And I'm like, are that many people driving to Uniontown?
I wouldn't think, but I don't know. I've never really spent a lot of time in Uniontown. I can't really say what's going on down there. So
no, me, I certainly haven't either. If you get a chance, and I'll try and see if I can find the link. Yeah, if you Google "I'm so UT," there was this guy JP, this rapper from Uniontown, who 15 years ago put a video on YouTube of his rap song "I'm So UT," where he raps about being from Uniontown, and it's awesome. And like I'm looking at it right now, it has like 76,000 views, and I swear at least 45,000 of those are me. Because I watched it so many times back in the 2000s. It's so good. Like I want to show it to you because like they're all wearing t-shirts that say so UT for Uniontown. He's got the one line 24/7 I'm 724. Like how good is that?
Dropping some bars.
Oh man, it's so good. Like I haven't watched JP's rap track I'm so UT in so long. I almost want to do a screen share just to show you the UT guys just real quick. I am going to do it because it's just too great as I see it. Let's see. There. Check those dudes out. You see that?
That's pretty sweet.
Is that not good? That is I got a lot of things open up at the top there, but you see they got their I'm So UT t-shirts on for JP's rap song I'm So UT. So
I wonder if Rodney Gallagher has one of the. He's like the most famous person from Uniontown I know. So
I never, I was actually going to make a joke earlier. I was like, all those signs for which way to get to Uniontown, they were very helpful for Rodney Gallagher when he would visit Pitt. So actually, I was going to make a Rodney Gallagher visit or a mention earlier. I don't think he didn't go in the portal, did he? Was it just Pitt fans saying, hey, he might go in the portal or something after Neil Brown got fired?
No, I mean it's weird and like it's like someone just like had a thread on their board. They're like, how did West Virginia keep their class together? I'm like, Neil Brown just got fired 2 days ago. Like, where are these kids going to go? There's no option. Like, it's either like sign or just be left in the void a little bit. So, like, that's kind of one of the weird consequences of the early signing day.
That might be, I mean, part of the upside. Like, get it, move it really early, and then they're signed. But I still think there's an opportunity you can get out of the letter of intent.
You can,
if your coach gets fired. Somebody did mention here, just bouncing around in the conversation, Quinn R mentioned Memphis, and I just looked it up. Memphis is like less than 3 hours from Starkville. So you could potentially fly into Memphis and have a pretty smooth drive. But I honestly couldn't tell you what city in Mississippi you would fly into. Like, what's the biggest city in the state of Mississippi off the top of your head?
Jackson.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it looks like on the map. The letters are the biggest for Jackson. So I wonder if, like, is there an airport in Jackson? I mean, I don't know how. I wonder what Pitt did. I got to think there's somewhere they can fly into near. Well, there is. There's that airport that I said, that Columbus airport is near Starkville. Jackson, Mississippi is a little more than 2 hours away from Starkville. So maybe if you could fly in there. But anyway, lots of digressions there. Pitt playing at Mississippi State at 9:15. You and I both picked Pitt to win. A lot of people will watch this or listen to this the day after the game, so we'll either sound like idiots or sound smart. I don't have a lot. Do you have a lot of insight on Mississippi State before we dive into like recruiting and stuff? Just on the basketball front, do you have a lot of insight on Mississippi State?
I mean, just most of the surface level stuff. Like Chris Jans is the coach. This is his third year. They made the tournament the past 2 years. We know how the first one ended for him. They have a good guard. Josh Hubbard's like at 19 points a game. They have another guy averaging 11 and 9. They don't seem to shoot it that well outside of Hubbard. They have some good wins. I think they beat like UNLV, a couple other teams, lost to Butler the other day. So it doesn't seem like Pitt's getting one of the better SEC teams, which might be a blessing because the SEC is just stomping all over the ACC this week.
Well, they didn't get one of the better SEC teams last year either, and that kind of. Does it bug you that they don't call it the ACC SEC Challenge?
See, I was like looking into that because I think the women's challenge is called the ACC SEC Challenge.
Really?
So I don't know if they're like alternating years. I'm not positive, but like I thought I saw like it styled that way for the women's challenge.
It just seems like you would do it alphabetically. Like I'm looking and it looks like the ACC Big Ten Challenge was the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Yeah. They called it ACC first because it's alphabetical. Like, but this is the ESPN's SEC bias again coming through, and calling it the SEC ACC Challenge. The only thing I could think is it's a little awkward to go from the C to the S, ACC SEC, as opposed to SEC ACC. There's a real break between the C and the A there. You know what I mean? Like I think it speaks a little easier saying SEC ACC as opposed to ACC SEC. Do you have a preference on that one?
I don't, but like now I wonder if they're alternating years. Like I need to look at the schedule last year and see what the Missouri game was.
Yeah. Well, we can do a little investigation into that and see what we can find out. Yeah, we'll see what happens with this game. I guess we really shouldn't dig too deep into it because, again, we'll just sound like idiots for anybody who watches this tomorrow. So we'll just pass on that. We both picked Pitt to win. We'll see what ends up being the choice. On Pitt's schedule last year, they called it the ACC SEC Challenge. This year, they're also calling it the ACC SEC Challenge. So Pitt, in a move of defiance, the resistance lives on Pitt's schedule here, calling it the ACC SEC Challenge. I mean, this merits a full-scale investigation that we shouldn't waste time on. But I am going to look at Mississippi State's website real quick to see if they, what they refer to it as. They've got one of these stupid-looking websites. Okay, Mississippi State calls it the SEC ACC Challenge. So real, and this game is being promoted as Blackout the Hump. So I guess Mississippi State's wearing black tonight. Are we assuming that?
I would think. And Pitt's wearing yellow.
They are?
Yeah, they had the little graphic out. Yeah.
That's not going to be pleasant on the eyes. It's going to be like watching a Steeler game. It's going to be black and yellow out there if Mississippi State is indeed blacking out the hump. But anywho, recruiting class. Pitt signed 21 guys today. We thought they'd sign 19. There was a chance when they would sign 20. At one point, the class was at 21. Actually, at one point, the class was 22 because somebody kept sticking a walk-on linebacker into the official recruiting class on Rivals. And then we finally got that taken care of. And then two guys decommitted. Elijah Dotson went to Michigan and Demarion Folks went to Missouri. And so it was down to 19. Looked like, well, it was, so it was actually was it at 23 at one point when the walk-on long snapper was included there?
Yeah.
Because he got taken out. And then the two decommitments. And then Khalil Sterling, who Pitt did not sign today, got them down to 19, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
So 22 was like the working number a week ago or 2 weeks ago before Dotson decommitted.
Right. And then so three names came out, and then they added two back in, two sort of surprises today. Let's start with those two guys, Jim. The two surprises they added: Jalen Brown, a running back, and Cameron. Is that his name? Cameron Sapp. Cameron Sapp. Did you ask it? You interviewed him. Did you ask if he's related to Warren Sapp?
I didn't, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Was I supposed to?
I mean, Jerry DePaula once asked Rylan Gandy if he was related to former Steeler Wayne Gandy, and I don't know why. I had some fun at Jerry's expense on that front, but so these two guys, I think Brown is interesting, the running back, because he's a little bit bigger than the other running backs they've signed. He told me he's 5'11", 193. He's got decent speed. And, the other two running backs in the class, Saquon Smith and Ja'Karian Turner, are smaller guys. They're like almost Des Reed-sized guys, maybe a little taller, but also maybe a little skinnier, whereas Jaylen Brown's got a little bit more size and decent speed. I don't know. What do you make of them signing 3 running backs in this high school recruiting class?
I don't know. I mean, I think just all along, like back in June, it just seemed like this offensive staff was going to try to get more of their guys into the system. I think they wanted to get speed. I think they wanted to get running backs that kind of fit their game. So it wasn't surprising. And it's been confusing all along because like some running backs are listed as receivers, some receivers are listed as running backs. So it's kind of been like tough to track. But I don't know. I'm not surprised. Maybe Montravius Lloyd going into the portal had something to do with it. Them losing Yasin Willis in last year's recruiting class. They were going to sign 2, only signed 1 running back. So maybe that kind of they thought they needed to get more numbers. But I think the common theme with all 3 is they're just fast. I mean,
yeah.
I like that's how Pitt wants to play. The receivers are fast, and I think everyone's wondering. It's like, okay, they're small. They're smaller guys. But we saw this offense this year. We saw when it's clicking, you don't really need to be all that big. I think a lot of the offensive failures were probably on the line, not so much the skill guys. So I think it can work. I think Desmond Reed's a great example of why it can work. But I don't know. It's you still look at these guys and you're still like, okay, they're 5'8". And I remember us having these conversations last year whenever Desmond Reed and CJ Lee and Poppy Williams committed. They're like, okay, they're really small. We're going to see if they can hold up. We're going to see if they can play in the ACC. But I don't know. I mean, I watched their films. They all look really good. They all look really fast or explosive. And you have to think at least 1 or 2 of them, could sneak on the field because speed always plays. So, I mean, I think that's kind of one of the better things of adding 3 running backs is you might get lucky with one might be ready to play next year.
It was interesting. I actually asked Lindsey Lamar, the running backs coach, I was like, is running back one of those positions? I was like, well, it seems like freshmen, play more at running back, maybe more than any other position. Is that one of those positions that maybe lends itself to running backs playing? And he was like, not as much in their offense. We have seen running backs play a lot as freshmen over the years, but he said in this offense is a tougher offense. There's more to do. There's more to learn. So maybe they're less likely to get on the field early. But to like that, I mean, I sort of believe him. I sort of don't. If you really don't think freshmen are going to be able to play, I don't know why you would take 3 guys in the class. Like, I think you take 3 guys because you're expecting to get somebody on the field this year because you're not really interested in using a portal spot on a running back. And I mean, like, that's sort of it's a separate conversation, but I mean, with Rodney Hammond and Montravius Lloyd both going, that leaves potentially 3 returning running backs with Desmond Reed, Derek Davis, and Juelz Goff. If you're bringing in 3 freshmen, I mean, is there even a need for a transfer? I've gone back and forth on whether they should or would bring in a transfer running back. Do you think? Do you just go into it with Reed and Davis and Goff if all 3 of those guys stick around? Is that enough depth for next season?
I think so, but then we're also like 5 days after when Pitt was down to its like 5th running back playing, and they were a snap away from a walk-on going into the game. So yeah, I mean, you always want to have ample ball carriers, and obviously Desmond Reed I don't think he's played a full season. I think last year he missed a couple games with Western Carolina. He missed 2 games this year. So it's just that position. It's not because Reed's small. It's just like the running back position lends itself like you're going to get hurt. I think Izzy Abanikanda, who's, built like an NFL running back, he missed games too. I mean, it's a demanding position. You're going to get hurt. You're going to need multiple backs to get through the season. But I don't know. I'm kind of with you. If you're signing 3 backs, you're expecting at least one of them to do something. I mean, I don't really necessarily buy that, Pitt's offense is so complex that a freshman can't play. I don't know. I mean, if there's one position on the field, especially offensively, I think running back's probably a guy that can get on the field. Receiver probably can get on the field. Like, obviously lineman, it takes time. I think tight end, it's complex. Quarterback's obviously hard, but I don't know. I think if your speed plays, you kind of learn the offense right away. There's no reason why you can't play.
Yeah, I mean Desmond Reed played at Western Carolina as a freshman, right?
Yeah.
I don't think he redshirted his first year there. So I think you're counting on it. And two, I mean, like, we talk about injuries. Derek Davis got lost to a pretty bad injury in the Boston College game. Who knows? Maybe that keeps him out long term, and you start worrying about your depth there a little bit. I think with three receivers, I get it. You kind of need to rebuild the receiver group. They signed 4 guys in last year's class, the 23 class, and half of them are gone already with Lamar Seymour going in the portal. They signed this year? Tyreek Robinson and Cameron Montero. So you're looking at like 4 total receivers over the last 2 recruiting classes. I forget what they brought in 2022. Can you even name the wide? I have it right in front of me. I have the commitment list, but
they only signed like 11 guys that year. I'm trying to.
Yeah, 13. It was Addison Copeland and Che Wabuko. And so neither one of those guys. So you're looking at the last 3 recruiting classes, you have 4 receivers total. I mean, I might as well look at the 21 class too and really extend this back. I've done this exercise before with wide receivers, Jaden Bradley and Miles Alston. So now over the last 4 recruiting classes, you have 4 receivers. Let's push this. I mean, let's see the 2020 class because I'm guessing I know what it's going to look like. Jalen Barton, Jordan Addison, Aiden Henningham. So the last 5 recruiting classes, right? So 2020 class, 2021, unless they played as freshmen, they'd be done this year. So let's not count them. But the 2021, 22, 23, and 24 recruiting classes going into next year, as it stands right now, will have 4 players from those 4 recruiting classes. You absolutely needed three transfers, or 3 freshmen. You also needed Dejon Reynolds as a transfer, Raphael Williams and Sincere Lee. And I wouldn't be surprised if they could try to get one more transfer there as well. Our good friend on the message boards, Pitt Chag, is very convinced that size doesn't matter when it comes to wide receivers, that it's overrated. People talk so much about getting size at receiver. You agree with him? Or do you think that this roster could use one more bigger receiver, assuming everybody else comes back?
I mean, it's a nice advantage to have, but I don't think it's like a requirement. Like, I think your offense can still function. I mean, you look at just the good NFL teams, like over the past, 10, 20 years. It's not like Tom Brady had a bunch of like huge, tall wide receivers. It's usually like little slot guys. Like you look at the Chiefs right now, it's little slot guys that like you kind of scheme guys open with speed. And I think that's what the idea of what Pitt is trying to do. Obviously, it helps when you have a great quarterback, but like I think you can function in today's football without having that big wide receiver. I think you can just kind of force the issue with speed, just try to spread the ball around. And I think that's what Pitt was trying to do in September, and it looked pretty good. Obviously, things changed, later in the year, but I think if this offense is working, if I think they have an offensive line that can give Eli Holstein protection, I think he'll be fine with just having a bunch of guys that are athletic and can just kind of get into space.
Do you think Cade Bell came out of 2024 thinking, I should probably get the ball to Kenny Johnson and Dejon Reynolds more?
I think in my 5 takeaways from the Pitt Boston College game, I was like, of all games, this is the game where it was so apparent that Mumfield and Johnson were their number 1 and 2. I mean, Mumfield was always their number 1 and 2, but like they should have gotten the ball so much more. And that's no disrespect to Poppy or Sincere Lee, but it seemed like they tried to force things a lot. But like sometimes when you have a good player, like you need to lean on them. Like I know your offense is, it can come from anywhere and everyone can beat you and we can do all this. But like at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, Desmond Reed's really good. Kanate Mumfield's really good. Kenny Johnson's really good. Let's just do that. And I think sometimes they got away from that.
Kanate Mumfield was awesome in that Boston College game. I know he had a bad drop, but I mean, he played his ass off. Like he made some incredible catch. I think he had, was that the best game of his Pitt career? I know it's 3 years. It's hard to remember, but I mean, like, I know statistically it was, but I mean, just like making catches like, holy crap, look at this guy. This guy is playing his tail off.
I think so. I mean, honestly, one of his better games I remember that sticks out was his first, the first West Virginia game. He was making like some really good catches on the sideline. I think whenever Pitt was trying to make that comeback. Like he made a couple like pretty sick catches for Keaton Slovis to keep the drive alive. So, but that yeah, like so his first game and his last game stick out the most. And like I'm a huge like Konate Mumfield fan. I've been
Same.
preaching all year. Like I think this guy's really good, and I think if they would have focused on him a little bit more, he probably should have had a better season. I think he got honorable mention All ACC. He was 7th in the league in receiving. So like if he just would have had a little bit better, he would have been in the top 6 and maybe got on one of the ACC teams. He was really close.
Yeah. He God, I mean, they basically list everybody in the honorable mention, right? Like I'm scrolling through this list. I mean,
yeah, more or less, yeah.
Nick James was an honorable mention, defensive tackle. Honestly, I if I had to pick a Pitt defensive lineman, I probably would pick Jimmy Scott. I think.
Yeah, he ended up having I don't know how many sacks he ended up with, like 6 or 7.
Yeah, statistically, he had a pretty decent year. He had 11 and a half tackles for loss and 6 sacks. Yeah, the Jimmy Scott and Sincere Edwards combined 17 and a half tackles for loss, 9 sacks. The 3 transfers they brought in, Nate Matlack, Chief Borders, David Ojebwe, 8.5 tackles for loss, 6.5 sacks. So literally more than twice as many tackles for loss and 2.5 more sacks with Jimmy Scott, the first-year starter, and Sincere Edwards, the true freshman. I mean, I would probably, if I had to pick a Pitt defensive lineman to make the All-ACC honorable mention, I would probably pick Scott, I guess. I don't know how Nick James separated himself there, but everybody was all worked up, too, about Ben Sauls being a third-team All-ACC pick. What did you were you surprised by that? Were you as mad as everyone else about that?
No, I mean, you look at like the Miami kid was 16 of 17. The Florida State guy was 13 of 13.
Yeah.
I mean, like Sauls had the best percentage of anyone who attempted more than 20 kicks. So I guess he got penalized for missing the 59-yarder against Clemson, which almost went in. I mean, he had the leg for it. So I don't know.
And the kick that got blocked too against Virginia, which I mean, that's not his fault. I mean, like somebody should have seen there were 92 guys lined up on one side of the ball. So I mean, he really had one bad miss. It was a 47-yard kick against SMU, I think.
Yeah, I think that was it. But I mean, if I had to pick a kicker to be on my team out of those 3, I would pick Ben Sauls. I mean, you take the guy that has range from 55 yards, and I think it was telling that he had more 50-yard attempts than those 2 guys, and I think he's probably more than likely going to get a chance at the NFL first and foremost among most college kickers. So I don't know. I mean, he got the recognition he deserved. I thought it was a good bounce back year for him. He wasn't all that great last year, so like I don't think anyone he didn't leave the season leaving any doubts. Like everyone knows he's incredibly strong leg. He did everything. Whenever they recruited him, they said like this guy's a really good long ball kicker, and he eventually proved to be one. So I don't know. Pat Narduzzi's had some pretty good kickers in his time. I mean, with Kessman and Blewett, and now Sauls. I mean, that hasn't been like a huge worry at Pitt for most of his tenure.
Yeah, and even like last year, he was 11 of 16. It's 5 misses. That's only 1 more than he missed the year before. Like he missed 4 kicks in 2022. He just went on that ridiculous streak to end the season. Made it look like he was, unbelievable. He just didn't have many opportunities last year. He only kicked 16 kicks because Pitt's offense just never moved the ball. He's really good. I think when I looked up, when they announced the Lou Groza Award finalists and he wasn't one of them, I was like, what? How could this be? And I looked up, I'm like, oh, it's a Florida State guy who at that time I think was 11 of 11. There was another guy from either Michigan State or Kentucky who had kicked like 25 field goals. He was like 25 of 27. He had made more field goals than anybody in the country. I'm like, okay, I get it. And like voters are going to look at numbers. You know what I mean? Particularly, I think ACC media voters voting for kicker of the year, they're probably going to just look and be like, this Florida State guy was perfect and probably scored more points than anybody else on Florida State's roster. And this Miami guy only missed 2 on, what we thought was the best team up until recently. So I get it. I mean, it's unfortunate. I think Ben Sauls deserved better. I kind of have this sneaking suspicion Kyle Lewis is not going to get ACC Defensive Player of the Year, even though I felt like it should be a lock. Oh, wait, did they announce it already?
Yeah.
Oh, Well, my hunt. Look, my sources are telling me. I thought they just announced the first team and second team and all that stuff.
They did the awards today. Like the Louisville kid got the running back got the ACC Rookie of the Year. Boston College player got the defensive end,
player of the year.
and he was awesome.
He was. Yeah. When did they announce that? I didn't get an email from the ACC. Oh crap! I got an email from the ACC. 4:00. What was I doing at 4:00? Well, Kyle Lewis was robbed. Defensive player. He didn't even get the second most votes. That's crap. He should have been.
I know. I mean, you and I started the campaign. I think like that he should be defensive player of the year when we started like digging up his stats and comparing him. Like he was ridiculous all year.
The Virginia Tech guy got one vote for player of the year. Somebody's stacking the votes for this. The Virginia Tech. What is he? A defensive end, Antoine Powell-Ryland.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's nonsense. That guy should not have gotten more votes than Kyle. Like Kyle Lewis was the most productive defensive player in the conference and the most productive defensive player in the country. The Boston College player was really good, but give me a break. Get out of here. That's I guess he is a semifinalist for the Walter Camp and Bednarik and Lombardi.
Yeah, he's really good, but raw numbers, it should be Kyle Lewis. Yeah.
Well, you know what? To be fair, I think you got to kind of consider too. Like Kyle Lewis didn't get to play against Pitt's offensive line. You know, that guy got a whole game against Pitt's offensive line. That's not fair. You know, like put Kyle Lewis against Pitt. Kyle Lewis probably has at least 3 more sacks. You know, and Rasheem Biles does too. You know, they're holding it against him that he didn't get. Anyway, what the hell? How did we get sidetracked here? What's going on? Back to recruiting. So 3 running backs, 3 receivers. As we sidetrack, and I realized that something happened at 4:00, and I had no idea that it happened, but that's fine. I had already come to terms with Kyle Lewis not being Defensive Player of the Year. He should still be an All-American, though, right? Yes, like Boston College kid isn't going to steal that from him, too. Then we might riot. Otherwise, in this class, I think it's a really good defensive recruiting class. It's not the first time we've ever said this about a Pat Narduzzi recruiting class. Most of them usually are, but I think especially in the back 7, I think these guys look really good. I think Sean Lee from Harrisburg, I'm excited about him. There's this weird hesitation because he's one of these like do everything athletes, and then they're going to put him at corner and expect him to be great there. And I think he probably will be really good, but kind of like it to see him play there a little bit more. I know he played there at Harrisburg, but like to see a little bit more. But, him and Mason Alexander as corners, Cole Woodson and Josh Gurrier as safeties, and then the 2 linebackers, Emmanuel Taylor and Justin Thompson. I mean, I think they're all just like really good fits for this defense. I think they got another really good defensive class. Certainly in the back 7. I like the linemen too. We can talk about them in a second, but what do you think of the back 7 in this class?
I think even coming out of June, we were saying like that's the most exciting part of this class. I think they did really well there. I think it's a testament to Archie Collins and Corey Sanders and just the reputation they've developed. I mean, I think whenever they can walk into a defensive backs high school, they can say, look, I've had a guy drafted for 5 straight years. Like we always have good players. Like we'll get you ready for the NFL. And that really resonates with kids. And I think that, that's one of those things where you can win recruiting battles. Like everyone's, Iowa State had a really good season this year, and Josh Gurrier was down. I think it was between Pitt and Iowa State, but I think Pitt won out just because they have that reputation. They have that, like, hey, like we're really good at developing safeties. Like look at all these guys playing in the NFL, and I think it sticks with kids. So even though they lost Elijah Dotson, who was technically their highest rated defensive back, like I still think it's really good. Sean Lee, to me, I mean, he's the real wild card because, like, he could end up just being awesome. Like, because I think even at Harrisburg, like, he didn't really start playing defense until I don't know what to call it. Like last year, it was his junior year or senior year.
Yeah,
I don't really know how that works.
Kind of his junior year.
His final year at Harrisburg, he started playing defensive back, and I think that's what attracted people. But like, if he would have like come up as a defensive back, if that's like would have been his main thing all along and not played quarterback, I think he would have had a lot more offers. I think he would have had a lot more attention. I think it's just because it's like, oh, he's this 5'10", like he's this awesome quarterback. We're not going to offer him to play quarterback. What do you do with him? But I think he started playing defense, and like I said, like Pitt's Pitt usually has a good eye for that. So I think it's going to translate for him.
Yeah, I think so too. And even like the defensive linemen are intriguing. Denham Cook and Julian Anderson as defensive ends. Neither one really played defensive end in high school. Like, I mean, they both rushed the passer. They both were sort of outside linebackers. Even if Cook was kind of an outside linebacker in like a 3-4, but I think Denham Cook, he's got the look of a guy that is just going to be good. You know what I mean? 6'3", 6'4", 240 pounds. I mean, he's big. He got hurt, so he had to miss time. But I mean, I think you've posted it too. His numbers the last 2 seasons, when he played a full season as a junior, his numbers was like 22 tackles for loss and 11 or 15 sacks, something like that. He had good numbers this year before he got hurt. I think looks pretty promising at defensive end. I don't know about Trevor Summers, the defensive tackle, and we'll see. But like, I think there's good potential up front too. So again, it's another strong Narduzzi defensive recruiting class. I don't think there's really like a weakness among any of the 3 levels. Maybe the defensive line. I don't know. Do you feel like the defensive line is a weakness in this class?
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it that way. I mean, I look at Trevor Summers as a high school player, maybe not so much as a prospect. Like he's like leading St. Thomas Aquinas, which is like the best high school in Florida, and like tackles for loss, sacks, hurries, like all that stuff. Like, so he's a really productive player playing against good competition on a really good team. So I don't know. I think that's usually a good sign. Denham Cook, like he's always been listed as an outside linebacker. I think when they first landed him, we weren't sure. But I saw him at a recent game. It might have been the Clemson game. He was on the field. And when I walked by him, I was like, oh, he already looks like a college player. Like he looks like he belongs, like, because he's wearing like a sling. He got hurt this year. He didn't play his full senior year. But so he just looked like one of the Pitt players that was injured. Like he's that big already. So like I think he's going to fit in nicely. And I mean, I like the potential. Julian Anderson obviously had to do a prep year. I think Dowse said he believes he can get up to 240. I mean, right now I think he's probably more in the 215 to 218 range, something like that. So yeah, that's when you're going to need a little bit of work. But like you said, I mean, they've been killing it at linebacker lately. They always do really well. They have a great eye for DBs. I don't know. It just kind of looks more of the same.
Yeah, I agree. Interesting comment here from Brock. He's a super chatter. Says 4 former Pitt commitments have gone into the transfer portal. Bryce Pollock from Mississippi State, Jason Johnson from UCF, Camden Brown, the wide receiver from Auburn, and Coy Beasley, the safety from Purdue. Any chance these guys end up at Pitt, or Pitt pursues any of them? I think Jason Johnson's really interesting. He played a lot at UCF this year. I just looked it up. He played 450 snaps on defense, started 4 or 5 games. He's a pretty interesting guy. I think Coy Beasley is one that a lot of Pitt fans immediately thought, oh, Pitt's going to go after him. I don't know if they really want a young developmental safety. I think if they want a safety out of the portal, and I think they might go for one, I think they want a guy who's experienced, who can kind of fill out the rotation. That if you have Javon McIntyre coming back and Cruz Brookins coming back and Jesse Anderson, you'd like a 4th guy with experience to be in that mix. I think they like the safeties they brought in. I think they like the safeties they're bringing in. They like Alan Bryant they brought in last year. So I don't know if whereas Coy Beasley, unlike Jason Johnson, really didn't play at all for Purdue this year. Played very few snaps. And so I think they want somebody who's actually played. So of those two, it would probably be Johnson, but I think Johnson's more of a corner than a safety anyway. And I don't know if they're really looking for a corner. Kind of ditto for Pollock. I think Pollock played a decent amount at Mississippi State. I just don't know if I see them going for a corner in the portal. And then Camden Brown, I don't know. Again, it depends on whether they want to get a bigger receiver out of the portal. He could be an option, but I think there might be other options they could pursue as well. You have any thoughts on those 4 guys?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you about like the defensive back thing, because like if there's one position they always stock pretty well, it's cornerback and safety. Like they're never short on numbers there, and they usually like the guys they recruit. So if they're going to bring in a transfer, it's going to be someone like Donovan McMillan, like someone they think that could just plug and play. And I don't know if any of those guys kind of fit that bill.
Yeah, I agree. Let's see. Josh Newark says, quite obvious the plan on running offense for running backs and receivers is speed, regardless of height. I might be skeptical, but in theory, this can work. That said, the O-line recruiting seems to be a bunch of wishful hopes and prayers, aside from Shep Turk. Not sure if taking flyers on rugby guys is the way to go. I don't know. I don't know. What do you make of this offensive line class? 2 tackles, 2 guards. Akram El-Nagmi coming in from England. Shep Turk coming in from Jefferson Hills. And then Torian Chester and Jordan Fields. It seems okay, I guess. I don't know. I have a hard time evaluating. I feel like Pitt recruits in that area, that tier of offensive line prospects, that is just one giant pile of potential. And you just don't know what you're going to get. And I don't know what to expect out of this group.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way because you look at someone like Jordan Fields, like his initial recruitment, I think he picked Pitt over Kansas and Houston. Like those are like, competitive like Power 4 teams you kind of want to win battles over, and even going down to Texas to do it. But like, you don't know how that's going to work out. I mean, you look at some of their offensive linemen that have been playing the past 2 or 3 years, like a lot of them are pretty good on paper. They're like the kind of guys you want to get, like offer sheet wise. I mean, even so, like Jackson Brown, Isaiah Montgomery, some of the guys who like had to play towards the end of the year, like they were fine recruits. They had multiple Power 5 offers. Like they're the type of battles you want to win. It's you just don't know with offensive line, and so a lot of it comes down to coaching and development, and we just kind of have to see how this staff goes about it, because on paper, none of these offensive line recruits are like, oh yeah, like this dude's definitely going to play. Like I really like Shep Turk. I thought he was awesome this year. I watched his film, and he just mauls people over, and you can kind of just tell. Like I think he's going to outplay his ranking. Like once Pitt offered him, like he kind of just shut down his recruitment. Like that's where he wanted to be. He didn't really care about anything else. But I think this season and a full summer, like if he was out there, I think more schools would have been interested in him. But that might be to Pitt's gain. But yeah, the other guys I'm not sure about.
Yeah. Josh Newark says, can you explain in English what the Athletic General Fund is? So this was announced yesterday or whatever. The Athletic Director's Fund, I think is what it's called. It's a tax deductible contribution to Pitt Athletics, where the money can be distributed at the discretion of the athletic director, not necessarily earmarked for champions funds or different funds that are available for each sport or this and that. It's a fund that the athletic director can use however the athletic director sees fit. And it's not quite the carte blanche that it sounds to be, but I think it is an early step toward bridging, what's the best way to say it, donations to the collective and the goals and efforts therein, bridging that with the tax deductible donations to the university and the athletic department. It's a way to sort of connect the two, or take some steps toward connecting the two, which I think ultimately will be one and the same, probably within the next year, if not within the next 6 months. It's sort of the first step toward that. So I don't know if that's explaining it in English. If we were sitting at a bar and you walked up to me and you're like, Chris, Jim, great to meet you guys. Let me buy you a White Claw. Tell me what the athletic director's fund is. We could probably lay it out in pretty clear, stark terms. But we're not in a bar and you're not buying me a White Claw. So I don't know. Do you have a more succinct way to say it, Jim? Or, again, understanding that we're not sitting in the bar getting White Claws from fans of the show?
I think it's just anticipating the next move, which I think is just the Alliance 412 collectives across the country are probably just going to be brought into the umbrella of the university. So I think it's just kind of establishing a place for where everything's going to go ultimately.
Yep. Let's see. I don't have an answer on this. Adam Vinchik wants to know, what are Pitt's chances to land the tackle from Western Carolina? I forget which one this is.
Austin Simmons.
That's right. Derek Simmons.
Derek Simmons.
Yeah, that's right.
He has a visit set up for the 12th and 13th. He has like three or four other visits. He keeps getting offers. I think he was one, like I posted like, oh, Pitt offered this Western Carolina lineman, and it like turned into absolute chaos. Then like an hour later, he got like one Power 5 offer. Then like 2 days later, he has like 20. So he's a good player. You would think Pitt has some connections there with Bell and Darvo. So I think he'd be a good land just based off of the attention he's getting. There's a lot of schools after him.
Yeah, he got his offer from Pitt like 2 days before Thanksgiving, and then it was like Houston, NC State, Duke, Cal, Michigan State, Texas Tech, UCF, Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, Florida State, Kansas State, Virginia, Northwestern. I mean, Wake Forest. It just keeps rolling. It'd be interesting. Are there 2 portal linemen visiting that weekend?
I think it's just
Another
him
guy,
and the tight end from Northwest
tight
Missouri.
end. That's what it is. It's a tight end, not a lineman. My mistake. Atkins or something like that.
Yeah, so
Northwest Missouri.
I think they have like 3 or 4 like known offers out there. I think those 2. I think the kicker from Charlotte.
Kicker. Yep.
And I think it might have been Adam Friedman reported that Pitt was interested in Troy Stiletto, the receiver from Clemson. So
Clemson. Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see what happens there. For Green says for him, the best bowl game for Pitt would be the Gasparilla Bowl versus Florida, the Pinstripe versus Michigan, or the Holiday Bowl versus Washington or Washington State. So that's what would be best for him. Jim, what would be best for you?
Well, I'm going to try to go, so maybe that's part of the reason I didn't go to Starkville. But I mean, I don't want to go to Yankee Stadium.
The easiest to get to would be like Annapolis. Right.
Annapolis, I can get there in 3 hours. That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be the easiest to get to, and probably. I mean, it's not I haven't been in Navy's press box in 9 years, but it's not luxurious by any stretch of the imagination. But it's cool. It's Navy and all that. I mean,
Does it have glass?
It does. It is not open air like Yankee Stadium.
Yankee Stadium's cold, man.
Yeah. I still wear my Pinstripe Bowl winter cap, but I don't know. People ask like, what bowl do you think Pitt's going to get? I'm like, I don't know. Like, it depends on how many teams get into the playoffs. Like it really, if it's one ACC team, that's different than if it's 2. That's different than if it's. I mean, it probably won't be 3 at this point, but that's different. It's all. It all depends on those kinds of things. It all trickles down from there, and they won't really know until after the ACC championship game. Football Stinks says, Chris, what would you grade this recruiting class? Class seems disappointing without Dotson or Folks. Yeah, I don't know, because I mean, I kind of like the receivers they got, and I like the DBs they got. Like if I give this class a lower grade, it's because of offensive linemen. Like it's not necessarily because of the receivers or the DBs. In terms of star power, sure. Dotson looked good on paper with the stars, and Folks looked good on paper with the stars. I think he was 4 stars on at least one other network. So star power, yeah, it took a hit with those guys, but that didn't really change my overall perception of this class. I'm not going to really fret about how they recruit defensive backs. If they lose a 4-star defensive back, I'm not really worried because they're pretty good at recruiting defensive backs. If they lose a receiver, I'm kind of more worried just about in terms of the numbers, because like we just said, they have 4 from the last 4 classes currently on the roster. And so they added the numbers. I'm not too keen on the fact that Tony Kinsler, Bryce Yates, and Cameron Sapp are all like, I don't know, they're probably listed between 5'9" and 5'11", which means they're really between 5'8" and 5'10". I'm not huge on that, but Folks wouldn't have changed anything there. What's Folks listed at? 5'9", 5'10"?
Yeah, he's the same type of player. So yeah,
he's another 5'9" slot receiver. So sure, he looked good. He looked like a really good player. It'd be better to have him than not, but that doesn't move the needle for me all that much on the class. So how would I grade it? I don't know. I think I overthink things too much, Jim, to be able to grade a class, because I'm like, well, you're grading the offense or the defense. So you're grading this position or that position. I mean, because I think the defense is a solid B+. The offense, I might say a C+. I don't know. It's not great, but I think there's a lot of usable parts in here and guys that can probably win some football games.
Yeah, I mean, and they've won a lot of games with this level of recruiting classes. I mean, now anymore, it's like, you got to get your base in, you got to get your 20 to 25 guys and kind of build up the ranks. But you got to be able to fill in the gaps in the transfer portal and kind of get lucky with a few of these guys. And that's how you win football games. So I don't know. It's when I look at it on paper, it kind of looks like most Pitt recruiting classes. I mean, I think there's probably going to be a couple guys in here that turn out really good. There's probably another Kyle Lewis in here, like a Servassier Dennis, just a random guy that you don't think much of. That's going to turn out to be a really good football player out of nowhere. And so I don't know. I mean, none of these guys for the most part, are probably going to affect how they do next year. So it's like
Right.
you just got to wait a year and kind of see.
It's a long way off for sure. John Jingleheimer Schmidt says, for what it's worth, back when UCF was in the American, they went with this current strategy: recruit undersized guys who are just faster and twitchier than everyone else. Worked for them at that level. I think it can work. You just got to make sure you're getting the ball to the right guys, and you got to make sure those guys are making plays. And you know what? You got to protect. You need the offensive line. You need the offensive line at this level, and maybe you could get by with it at Western Carolina. Maybe you could get by with it in the American Conference, but at this level, you need to be able to block. So I'm probably less concerned about the receivers than I am about offensive line in general. I feel like, do you feel like Pitt fans are just shell shocked right now because of how the offensive line? I mean, I think if there's one place where the blame gets placed for the 5-game losing streak, it's largely the offensive line. And so, do you feel like Pitt fans are just kind of like, everything they see, they're like, offensive line, what does this do? Does this, can they move this guy to the offensive line? I don't know. I feel like it's the boogeyman right now is the offensive line. So, and I'm guilty of it too. I'm like, well, you got to be able to block, but it's like true, right? Like there's reality to it.
I mean, the whole thing with college football is everything's based off of momentum, and like you are what you've done lately. So like right now, Pitt fans have just witnessed a 5-game losing streak, and they are losing their minds over it. And I mean, as stupid as it sounds, like even if they got the win against Boston College, people would feel a little bit better. Like I know people would be like, "Oh, they still wasted that season," but like no, like the vibes would still be just a little bit better right now if they just won one of those games or two of those games. So I don't know. Everything's about momentum right now. So like, yeah, we just watched this team lose 5 games in a row. We just saw them kind of have 2 quarterbacks kind of get knocked out because of some poor blocking. So yeah, like that's the topic right now. That's the momentum we're on. It's bad momentum.
Good times. Good times. Josh Newark says, what was the deal with the Pitt coach today talking about the transfer portal and players that Pitt should be on the lookout for that weren't currently in the portal? I can't remember the entire conversation, but it sounded weird. I was in the South Side. What was it, Jim?
I thought it was like the Douse was looking at a portal player, and he was like, somebody told him like, "Hey, go look at Julian Anderson."
Yeah, that's right. He was talking to the Blair Academy coach, so I presumed he was looking at a Blair Academy player in the portal. But I mean, to this, whatever Josh is addressing, I mean, I think like coaches are very much on the lookout for guys who are not in the portal yet. Like they're aware of guys who might go into the portal. They are aware of guys they would like to see go into the portal. Jeff Capel told me last summer, he was like, when they were preparing to play Florida State and there were rumors that Leonard Hamilton might retire, they all, like him and his staff were like, boy, if Hamilton retires, we need to keep an eye out on this Cam Corrin guy. Like coaches absolutely talk about players who might go into the portal who are not there yet. You'd like to think all the coaches have morals and scruples and they don't start pursuing guys until they actually go into the portal, but they absolutely are looking at guys and keeping an eye out for guys and, hoping guys go in. I don't think there's anything weird or surprising about that. ZC717 says the scheme works, just need a better and healthier offensive line. I don't disagree. Do you?
No, I mean, the offense was kind of clicking until the left tackle went down and everything else caved in.
Yeah. And ZC717 follows up and says Pitt has a good quarterback. They just need the line to hold up. Eli Holstein still, I think, has a lot of potential. It comes down to the line. I think, Jim, the reason the offensive line is such a priority in the portal this offseason and why it's the number 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 and 5 things that they want to get out of the portal, I think is because they're looking at it like, okay, we've got at least one more year of Eli Holstein. Nothing guaranteed beyond that, but at least one. We got to make the most of it because I think they believe he can be a special quarterback. And I kind of agree with them. I think he can be really good. And so if you've got a quarterback, like you can't waste it behind a crappy offensive line. And you have to get the starters to come in and play. And they also have to get transfers who can be the depth too. So that when you run into injuries next year, not if, but when you are prepared to backfill and keep the level of play up to give your quarterback a chance. I think they see an opportunity next year, despite the more difficult schedule, to really win some games with a really good quarterback. But I think they know in order to actually pull that off, they've got to block for him. And I think that's why the offensive line is such a priority. Like there's an opportunity here. And I think they want to try and make the most of it.
I agree. I mean, I like if football was still normal, like pre-portal, NIL, all that, like I would have looked at this season as like this is the year you want to build something, and next year's the year you want to try to go for the ACC. And like, I mean, I still think there's some credence to that thought. I still think like they can gear up and try to have a better season next year if they keep the right guys, bring in the right guys, and have the quarterback to do it. So yeah, I mean, it's Eli. You don't like lead a couple like fourth quarter comebacks in like your second and third game on accident. Like there's definitely some talent there. There's a reason he was the top 100 recruit. So I think you saw glimpses of it, and I think over a full season with the right supporting cast, I think he could be really good too.
Doug Meckler says, my daughter and I are two of the Pitt fans at the Mississippi State game. So shout out to Doug, huh?
Where'd you fly into?
Yeah, Doug, if you're still on, Doug posted this comment 18 minutes ago. Hopefully he's still there. We'd like to hear, Doug, about your travel plans. He hasn't said anything else. So hopefully Doug chimes in here in the next 3 or 4 minutes that we'll be on here. Let's see. Paul Sebastian says, do you think Eli Holstein puts a lot of pressure on himself to keep doing what he did up to the North Carolina game, and that pressure caused him to not be able to sustain it? I think he probably puts a lot of pressure on himself because he's a quarterback, and I think that's what quarterbacks do. I think they want to be the best and want to carry their team. I don't know if that's what really contributed to it. I think played really well through the first 5 games, although not perfect. I think it's always important, Jim, to point out that, like, the first 40 minutes of Cincinnati, he sucked. You know what I mean? Like, he was bad, and their offense was bad in the first 40 minutes of the Cincinnati game. And then the first 20 minutes, they turned it on, and it was really good. And he ends up with 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. West Virginia is sort of similar, but not exactly. Carolina, I think he was more consistent, probably their best all-around game. I think we've talked about that before. And then I think he ran into a defense that had a good scheme and a good plan for how to defend him and how to defend Cade Bell's offense. And I think it took a while to adjust. I think he played like a redshirt freshman, and then he started getting hurt. And so I don't think it was about, I don't think he got exposed. I don't think it was that he couldn't sustain it because he put too much pressure on himself. I don't think it was like, oh, actually, it turns out he sucks. He's not as good as he looked in the first 5 games. I think there were some adjustments that needed to be made, and it took a while for him and for Cade Bell to adjust to it. And I think then he got banged around and he got hurt. And I think that's why his play fell off as it did. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. That Cal game is when everything changed, and like Cal kind of seemed to just have a beat on everything he was doing, everything Pitt was calling. So I don't know if that game frustrated him, but like it kind of got weird after that because like the Syracuse game, it's like he just wasn't on the field. Like he didn't do anything. Like it was the offense just was sidelined. So I don't know. Maybe at that point you start to press a little bit, and that's whenever he started getting injured and things like that. But I don't know. I mean, like some of the hits he took were like kind of just unfortunate. Like I don't know. Like late in the Syracuse game, he's running on the sideline. Why is he even running at that point? Like why do you need your quarterback quarterback running back? Because like I think they just wanted to get the offensive going. Then the other one he's sliding. It's just he just had a bunch of bad luck, and this team had a bunch of bad luck. Like people were losing their minds the other day when Pitt was losing to Boston College, and I was like kept saying, I'm like, they are a snap away from putting in a walk-on at quarterback and running back. Like this is who they're down to. Like I know you want to beat Boston College. I know you think Boston College stinks, but like Pitt's not in a position to like be down like 5 starters on offense and be all that competitive.
Yeah, I agree. There were so many walk-ons that were going to play in that game. Josh Newark says Pitt broke Ohio State. Yeah, Ohio State lost at Maryland 83-59. They actually, I mean, they were better in the second half. Ohio State won the second half 42-33 tonight. But did you see the halftime score?
Yeah, it was something crazy.
50-17. Like Ohio State couldn't miss against Pitt, and they scored 17 points in the first half against Maryland tonight. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. All right. Last question. Paul Sebastian says, second question, do you think the defense got full of themselves after the Syracuse game? Seems they thought they were indestructible, but SMU wasn't believing the hype. I do. Actually, I kind of believe that. I think they went into that game thinking they were just the, cat's pajamas, and they were not. And I'll never forget the SMU kicker clowning them with like the Sharks thing after he made a kick. And I was like, damn, they're down bad, because and that was like the height of the hype with the Sharks and the linebackers with the pick sixes against Syracuse, and they had the big pregame sort of special feature about them and everything like that. And SMU was clearly like, man, I don't want to hear any of that, and we're going to show you how we don't want to hear any of that, because we're going to go up and down the field on you. And they certainly did. But I do think I think the defense might have gotten a little full of themselves. Do you think so?
I think to a degree, and I think that game was humbling. But obviously Louisville crushed them too. But they did come back and have an incredible performance against Clemson. They were kind of kicking their ass until the last play of the game. That's the unfortunate thing. They had a 99% really good game. But I don't know. SMU kind of got to them, and I think that knocked them down a peg. And Louisville, I think, kind of did a lot of the same stuff, and they just kind of found those soft spots where you can always beat Pitt. Some teams just can't figure it out, and that usually works in their favor. But Jeff Brom was going to find those spots, and it worked. And I still think they weren't the most talented Pitt defense ever. I still think there were some holes on that side of the ball, and they weren't the greatest. But SMU just kind of figured them out that night, and just really just kind of rubbed their nose in it.
And the worst thing about the Louisville game was how they were able to run the ball. That's not typically one of the soft spots in Pitt's defense. And they just pushed them around. They had 140 yards after contact. I mean, that's a significant amount. I mean, just pushed them around. And that's not what you typically see. But, oh, well, it's over. Season's over. There'll be a bowl game. And then we'll just keep talking recruiting and transfers. But thanks everybody who chimed in on the comments in the chat tonight. We appreciate everybody who watched the show. I got the Pitt basketball game coming up here in about 10 minutes, so we're all looking forward to that. Tomorrow morning's Morning Pitt will not be about the basketball game because I'm not going to record it at 11:30 tonight. We will talk about recruits and transfers and things like that. We'll talk hoops on Friday. But thanks everybody for tuning in. Jim, thanks for your time this evening. As always, make sure you like this video and subscribe. youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Enjoy the game tonight. Have a great evening. We will catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.